In this video, we're going to learn about what is writing really. And I'm going to go over just some basic concepts of what it is and how we deal with it in the university. Okay, so what is writing? Writing is the physical representation of spoken words. We take our felt sense, our thoughts, and our feelings, and we automatically attach words to it, and we take that and we physically put it down on the page. That's what writing is. What is the difference between then speaking and writing? If, I have a feeling and I have a thought, and then I attach a word to it, and then I write it down. Well, there is no fundamental difference between speaking and writing. Oftentimes people will say, well, speaking and writing is different. Not necessarily so. Fundamentally, it's the same. The time, place determines the tone, the form, the word choice. But of course, there is a difference in writing. Fundamentally, it's the same, but really, with writing, you can change it, you can alter it before someone actually sees it. Versus speaking, a lot of times, the moment you say it to the person listening, you can't take it back. You can't really edit it. There is that difference, but fundamentally, when we're creating, there's not much difference. Okay, so then what do we use writing for when we're in college? Well, like speaking, we use writing to learn and to inform. Okay, so that's the purpose of it. We use it for that. So keep that in mind. It's not just mindless scribbling. There's no purpose if you have no mind to scribble. All right, so if writing is speaking, what are the ideas behind it then? Behind writing and speaking? Well, there are three ideas that must be understood about speaking and writing. So first, you need to understand the moment that you're communicating. Okay, you need to understand the ways that we connect to the people that we talk to, and then lastly, you need to understand the process that it takes to communicate. So first off, the moment of communication. What is that? Well, the moment of communication is known as kairos. All right, it's like X marks the spot where all of the different variables meet. That's the moment of communication. So the speaker, the time, place, and the culture, the audience, and the subject. The speaker brings them all together. Okay, X marks the spot. That's the sweet spot where everything sort of goes and comes together. That's the moment of communication. So if you're a writer, speaker, you need to be aware of who you're talking to, what you're talking about, and the time and place and the culture that you're actually talking in. If you're not aware of that, then it's easy to turn off whoever wants to listen to you. So, there's a time and place for everything. You've got to be aware of that. The next thing is the ways that we connect. So what are the different ways that we connect to the people that we're talking to? Well, they're known as the rhetorical appeals. You might have learned this before in high school. But I'm going to revisit these concepts. So first off, here's a person. And a lot of times when we're communicating, we're talking to this person. And we're a person too, of course. And we're made up of three different aspects when we're communicating. First one is the mind. So we can connect to the person's mind. And that's known as logos or logic. We're connecting to their logic. The second thing is we can connect to their heart, also known as pathos, or their emotions. The third thing is a little more abstract, and I see a lot of people do it incorrectly, is we connect not to the speaker's not to the listener's image, the audience's, but your own. All right, you project your image or your ethos or credibility. So when a person, you're going to connect how they perceive you, and then you're going to connect to their mind, how they think, and you can connect to their heart, how they feel. So those are the three aspects of a person, and those are the three aspects that we connect to when we write, and that's known as the rhetorical appeals. People believe us, people can understand us if we connect to these different things, and it depends on the situation where we're trying to make the connections. And these connections overlap. It could be thoughts that sort of generate a feeling, or feelings that generate a thought, or the way that the person appears, the way they project themselves, that affects how we feel about them, or how we think about them, or think or feel about how they speak, or what they're talking about. So it's not like they're separate. They're all together, and they're a mix. The last thing is the process of communication. So what do we keep in mind when we're talking about the process of communication? The process of communication is made up of 5 steps. First, invention, then arrangement, then refinement, memory, and delivery. So this is the process, and you can move around this process where you can invent something and you keep on arranging it. And it's not exclusive, so that I didn't number this. Because, even though we start at the top, a lot of times you have to repeat a lot of the steps. So what is invention? Invention is you just make stuff up. A lot of it is based off of our knowledge. Either we already know this or we learned it. And then when we're communicating, we're putting it together, right? You put sentences together, you made it all up. One of my favorite lines from the Avengers, especially I believe it is Avengers, either Endgame or one of the ones with Thor. And Thor, yes, Endgame. Thor has to go to Nidavellir to get the magic axe, or have the dwarf make the axe. And he says, Nidavellir, and Drax says to him, "You just made that up." And then Thor says, "All words are made up." Right? And that's the truth. All words are made up. All your sentences are made up. So first step, make up stuff. Second, arrangement. Clean up and organize your made up stuff so it makes sense, because when you're making it up, it's a mess. And it's okay. That's normal. You got to clean it up. So when you're writing an essay or you're writing a paragraph or whatnot, you got to make it up first. Then you can clean it up. If you're trying to clean it up and make it up at the same time, that sort of messes you up and slows you down. Okay, next is refinement. Let's clean up the details, such as grammar, spelling, punctuation, and the rest. Memory. Well, in the old days, you would memorize your essay and you deliver it as a speech, because that's all that an essay is a speech that you're trying to make. So memory, saving your file, memorizing it, practicing it, etc. Okay, lastly, deliver it. Delivery, and that's turn in or present or execute whatever you've written. Those are the 5 steps. All right. So there's also one thing you need to be aware of, like I was mentioning before, that you'd move around the different steps. Writing is recursive or repetitive. So what does that mean? When you're composing and you're making things up, when I mentioned you can slow things down, it's not like what people think oftentimes, that writing is you go from point A to point B. You have a thought and you write it down, and that's it. It's never this simple. You know that. Life is never that simple. It's not A to B. Writing is recursive, which means naturally when you're writing, you're going to end up going around in a curve. All right, so it's more like this chart where you end up curving around, and then you get to B. Okay, so anybody who's written, you notice that you'd write something, and then you sort of like go back up to what you're reading, and then you write some more, and then you forget, and then you lose your attention. So it really is. Each step looks more like this, right? So let's take a look at what recursion means. Okay, so you write something, and then you read what you just wrote, and then you go back to second guessing whether it's right or wrong, or is that comma supposed to be there, whatever, and then you continue forward. So you end up spending a way more time second guessing yourself and reading what you've written than writing. So as we're understanding this, when you're trying to, if you know this, when you're writing, you want to close this loop to make it as small as possible in order to have a product, because it does nobody any good if it's just stuck in your head. So you have to really understand just what your body and your mind is naturally trying to do, and naturally it's going to make it recursive like this. So once you're aware of it, you can sort of hotwire your mind and your process to make it more efficient and faster. So what do we consider, so what is generally expected in college writing? Well, at least in my class, I expect you to be clear and direct in your arguments. What that means is you got to write simply. Choose the best word, not the fanciest. A lot of times people want to impress by using a lot of fancy words, and all you do is you impress the wrong way. All right, so dropping a lot of fancy words actually reveals ignorance rather than knowledge. Take a side when you're making an argument. Make sure you're really definite what your point is. Sometimes you're going to have to be super direct and just say exactly what you want to say in the simplest words. All right, and then you can start building it from there. Okay, choosing the best word. You got to keep that in mind, all right? Because sometimes the best word is a long word. It is a more complex word because we're trying to match the definitions of words to feelings and thoughts. That's why it's important to build a vocabulary and to learn a foreign language to help be able to match up more words with thoughts and feelings. Okay, genuine thought, reflection, and interaction between, well, you're expected to interact between you and the text as you're reading. All right, to take notes on the book itself or in the books, because you're talking back to the author and you're reflecting, and it's okay to disagree. You just got to make sure you back up why you disagree. The student, okay, to the instructor, okay, to the academy, the university, and to like your fellow classmates, to be real, and give feedback. Not just like look at a paper and say, well, that looks nice. You got to really pick it apart. Okay, and you're expected to be self-driven and independent in your improvement of your writing. Okay. So this means you're going to have to seek help from your classmates, writing center tutors, the professor. Self-driven. Everybody's busy. Not everybody's going to be able to reach out to help you. You're going to have to identify why you need help, where you need help, and go seek it. Okay, so you're going to have to be active about that.